Hello, I wanted to show you my project to print to a Dymo printer from an iPad running Planning Center check-ins using a Raspberry Pi and some open source software. The project is on my GitHub page at this URL, and everything is open source. You can follow the instructions there, but this video will just give you a general overview of what the process looks like. Step 1 is to enable universal printing, which is a feature of Planning Center check-ins that at this point is beta, so it's opt-in. Down the road, it may be opt-out or it may be on by default. The next step is to download Raspbian Buster from the Raspberry Pi website and to write it to an SD card. And we'll go ahead and insert our SD card into the computer. And I use a program called Etcher to write that file to the SD card. Select the file that we downloaded and make sure it's writing to the device that we would expect and start flashing. This can take quite a while. I'm going to speed up the video. Once it's done writing to the SD card, don't take it out yet. We have to write one file to it to enable SSH. The file needs to be called SSH or ssh.txt. On my Mac, I create that file with the touch command in the terminal by typing touch volumes boot SSH. If you're on Windows, you can use Notepad, and again, the file just needs to be called SSH or ssh.txt. And we'll eject the SD card and put it in our Raspberry Pi and get ready to hook everything up. And next we'll hook up everything, plug in the network cable and the power cable and the USB cable for the printer. The next step is a little tricky, and there's lots of ways to do it. Essentially, you want to find the IP address of your Raspberry Pi so that you can connect to it. Here I'm using a program called Nmap to scan my network for devices. You can also use your router/firewall. If you can see DHCP leases, that will also show you devices on your network so that you can find your Raspberry Pi. In any case, we just want to find the IP address so that we can run the SSH command so we can connect to it. On Windows, you would need to use something like PuTTY, but here I'm just running SSH, and the username is Pi. And right away, I'm going to change the password from the default of Raspberry to something that I know and is not the default, something that's a little more secure. Next step is to download my script from GitHub and to run it. Right away, it's going to ask if we changed our password from the default, and we're going to say yes. And next, the script will download a lot of software and install it for you. This can take quite a while. I'm going to speed up the video here, but when it's all done, it will ask you to configure your printer. And once it's found the printer, it's going to ask you to select the driver for the printer. So you just need to select the one that matches. In my case, it's a label writer 450. And right away, it's going to print a label with the word test on it. If that worked, then we're good to go. Let's do a reboot. And once it's had a few minutes to reboot, we're going to use a program called VNC to connect to the Raspberry Pi visually using the GUI. And the way you connect is with the IP address :1. Make sure you do the :1. The username is Pi, and the password is the one you set earlier. And you'll be presented with Planning Center check-ins. You just need to log in with your login. And the next prompt that comes up is this asking to have access to the QZ tray application. We want to remember this decision and click Allow. And the next step is to do another test print, but this time from Planning Center check-ins, and it will print a label. And mine is cut off a little here, but that's okay. As long as it printed something, you're good. And now we get to create our station. Now, this isn't a station that someone will use to check in directly because there won't be a screen attached. It'll be under a table or something out of sight. But we want to give it a name that's easy to find later when we're looking through the list of stations in Planning Center. So I usually name mine with a location and the word RPI in the name. Everything else can be default, including print to should be this station. And that part is all set up. If this Chrome window comes up, you can close that, but make sure you leave the check-ins window open, and we'll close VNC. And there it is. Everything's hooked up. We need to go to our iPad now and make sure it's set to print to the station that we just created. And we'll do a check-in to make sure everything works. We'll check in 2 people, and if it prints out 2 labels, then we're good to go. There you have it. It's a setup with an iPad and a Dymo printer. Pretty inexpensive solution, and it works really well. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that you can use it at your church like we have at ours, and let me know what you think. Thanks.